Canine Detection Collaborative, a detection dog training trio with Stacy Barnett.
Hi.
Robin Grubel.
Hey there.
And Crystal Wing.
What's up?
With humor and a big dose of theory, our trio talks practical training advice and features interviews with top trainers and scientists.
It's Canine Detection Collaborative.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canine Detection Collaborative podcast. Today, I'm here with Stacy Barnett.
Hello.
And Dr. Lauryn DeGreeff is joining us for a wonderful discussion about canine olfaction. Lauryn, we're so happy you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to do this.
So we sent you like this whole big, huge list of questions. And one of the things that I'm always interested in, and this comes from like my former corporate job, how did you get where you're at?
It was not the most direct path, but I feel like that's probably the common answer for most people. So I wanted to do forensics from a pretty young age before the shows started coming out and everything. And I don't exactly remember how that came up, but I wanted to do forensics. So I went to school. I wanted to go to med school and be a forensic pathologist. And then I decided that that would be boring, but I waited really long time to make that decision. So I finished with an anthropology degree that I use also frequently. And I finished with an anthropology degree and a pre-med emphasis, I guess, and then took a year off and went and got my chemistry degree and bachelor's in chemistry from a different school.
Yeah.
So, and then I wanted to do forensics, and I decided that, I learned that Florida International University was the first to have an accredited Ph.D. program. So I went there. And when I went there, I thought I was going to do explosives and arson analysis. That's what I thought would be interesting. And what happens when you go into grad school, at least for mine anyway, at the beginning of the semester, when you get in, they have all the professors stand up and talk about what their research interests are. And I heard Dr. Ken Furton stand up and talk about, he was using, his big emphasis then was human scent dogs. So dogs that, would track and trail and whatnot. And I did not even occur to me that that was forensics or that was even a thing that one could study. And I thought it was really cool. So I joined his group and I liked it and I liked research and I never stopped doing it. So I left, I graduated, obviously. And then I worked at the FBI in the research unit for a year and a half. It was a postdoc. And then I moved to the Navy. I worked at the Navy doing similar research for 10 years. And now I am back, all the way back around to Florida National University as a professor.
Okay. So
wow.
I know I'm like, oh, I have so many questions.
I know I'm sitting here feeling really insignificant, but,
so what is your official, because I know as a faculty member, you probably wear like 5 hats at the university. What are all the hats that you're wearing at the university?
So I'm an associate professor, but I'm still kind of a baby professor. So I just got in. So I'm an associate professor, which basically means that I have students that in my research group. So I have a research group and I have a lab, and then I also teach. So right now I'm teaching forensic chemistry.
And when you say your group, do you have like a lab?
I do. I have a lab. You'll like this. I have 5 female scientists, all PhD students. 3 of them are shared with Dr. Furton because continues to be it's a long story. I collaborated with his lab when I was at the Navy. And so now that I've come and I'm now like half borrowing his students, but then I have 2 of my own and I'll be getting more in the fall. So lots of research.
that is super exciting. I don't know about you, Robin, but every time I hear the word lab, I get the wrong picture in my head.
Oh, you get dog.
So yeah, not a floppy-eared one, right?
Not the floppy-eared kind.
Right.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So let's go back to the human scent research that you started out doing as an undergraduate student. What types of things were you guys studying?
Yeah, so that was graduate school. So that was human scent, and I just dabbled in the living human scent for a minute, looking at the best ways to collect the human scent to give it to the dogs so we could get more accurate trailing. I only did that for a minute, and then I moved into human remains, which I thought, not that I thought it was, I don't know, I really liked it. I thought it was really interesting. It's a really, really difficult research question that has a ton of avenues to explore. So I like that about it. So we started doing the grad school stuff had to do with, again, with like collection materials for human remains. So how could you make a non-hazardous training material based off of real
Stuff.
human scent instead of like a pseudo? We were using a scent vacuum that they use for human scent. It's called the scent transfer unit, and there's other iterations that exist now. So we were using the scent vacuum that they use to collect human scent, and we were bringing that to the morgue and to the body farm in Tennessee and places to collect scent. Actually, a lie, I did that at the FBI, the Tennessee part. But I did bring it to different locations to collect scent from bodies or body parts, so you could grab different decomp pictures on like non-biohazard.
That's incredible. Okay, can you talk a little bit more about that? I'm just really kind of fascinated about that whole idea.
It kind of died, sadly. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, I should resurrect that and see if we can get it to go anywhere. So
interesting choice of words, but okay.
It is, isn't it? No pun intended. It's funny that you mentioned that, because now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of an interesting project that maybe I should resurrect. But we basically took different types of gauze-esque materials and put them on the scent vacuum. And the scent vacuum is really the back end of a dust buster with a big head on the front. And it's literally the back of a dust buster. And it pulls air onto the gauze, and you can pick different speeds, and we optimized that. And we held it over bodies, or we had, goop.
That's a technical term.
In jars that we held it over, and things of that nature. And we collected a whole library of scents. And then we went and did some dog testing with Barbara Weekly Jones. And then I also just sent some stuff out to handlers. And it was a cool project, because now you have training aids, that work for a whole bunch of different human remains sort of scenarios, right, without having to actually have any of the human remains. So theoretically speaking, you could get, if you had one of these, you could go become friends with your local forensic anthropologist or what have you, and have them take a whole ton of samples. And then you put them in your little Mylar bags or whatever, and ta-da.
And because I get questions all the time from cadaver dog handlers, like in Europe and Canada, who they can't legally possess anything. Right. And that would be really key for them.
Yeah. There is a scent vacuum that is sold online. I have not looked at it or assessed it. It does exist. The particular one that we used doesn't. I think the FBI has a bunch of them, but on pallets, like in a warehouse.
Probably in a closet.
But I don't think you can sell that one anymore. But there are other variations that exist online. And then we just used like Band-Aid. It was Ducal at the time, but I think it's Band-Aid brand gauze. We use different types, but right. What we figured out is the ones that were a cotton poly blend grabbed a larger array of different types of compounds. So you got a better scent picture.
So how did you, and I know you've done, some research in terms of, I'm going to totally botch this, by the way, but kind of the strength of the odor and how that's perceived. How badly am I botching that? Probably pretty badly. But from the perspective of if you're sucking up this odor, are you able to somehow, if you have like a large quantity versus small quantity, is that, are you able to kind of...
Can you collect? We didn't get into that. And that's a really good question, because we were just trying to maximize how much we could get on that gauze pad. So if you obviously ran it for a short, I think we ran the vacuum for a minute. So you could obviously just slowly decrease that, and it should decrease the entire scent picture, not like part of it. It's not like you only get one group of compounds and not the other. You can run the vacuum at different speeds, but then you would get certain compounds that would stick better and certain ones that would fly through the gauze. So that wouldn't be the best way of doing it, but you could adjust it with just like simply not taking as long to make it, like sucking the air for less time.
Because that was one of my questions, is if you had actually with the gauze, because I know a lot of people use odor soaks, right?
Right.
Whether it's narcotics, explosives, whatever. And a lot of people use cotton balls and Q-tips.
Yeah.
And do the cotton balls and the Q-tips actually attract and hold a certain set of compounds and then not other stuff that could not appropriately represent your entire scent picture?
Yeah, we found, and some of this was done by other people in my lab. We found, so the cellulose that is what makes up cotton has, I'm trying to unchemistry this, but it's a very chemistry question.
Thank you.
So cotton is made up of cellulose. That's what it's molecularly made up of. And that is a certain shaped molecule that has certain little different atoms sticking off the ends. And then you have polyester, which is like a polymer. So it's a very straight thing that has less little things sticking off of it. And those little atoms sticking off of it will affect what it traps ultimately. Okay. So basically, because the structure of cellulose in the cotton is different than the structure of polyester, they grab different things. So we found that by doing the blend, you get a bigger array of compounds. So what we took that to mean, it was that it was closer to the reality of what that scent picture is. For drugs and explosives, it's a lot easier to do a soak accurately because you're dealing with 3 compounds that are, potentially related to the odor, as opposed to human remains, which is hundreds.
Right. with
And we don't know, with the drugs and explosives, we have a decent idea of what the dogs are alerting to. With the human remains, we still have no idea. So we really want to grab as much of that odor as possible.
Right. Okay. So the Whatman paper, which is cellulose, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I use those a lot for the narcotics and explosives dogs. And so that's good.
We use those too. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with using pure cotton for human remains. We just compared pure cotton to the blend, and the blend got a larger array.
Okay.
That's not to mean that you couldn't train the dogs off of the pure cotton or using the pure cotton. You certainly could. We just, human remains is more like shooting in the dark because we don't know what the dogs are alerting to compared to narcotics and explosives. But the filter paper, we use that in my lab sometimes because it does work very well.
Right.
In fact, I have a project right now where we're sending filter paper out to someone to get odor on it, and they're sending it back.
Oh, interesting.
It's cheaper and easier to send. So
yes, fits nicely in a little Mylar bag.
It does.
Yes. So that was graduate work. Then you went to the FBI.
Yeah. It was very similar research in the sense that it was still human scent and human remains odor. I worked under Dr. Brian Eckenrode, which if you've read any of Arpad Voss's papers, there was a couple that Brian was authored on back in the day. So the FBI did do some work with him. I am not implying that the FBI endorses him. I'm just putting that out there before I get in trouble. Just saying they're those boss papers that people know. Right. Anyway, so I worked for Dr. Brian Eckenrode at the FBI, and I also did things relating to human scent and human remains. The most part of the project that I really got to get my teeth into was related to blood. At the time, the FBI had a blood detection dog. Her name was Keela. She was wonderful. She's my favorite dog I've ever worked with.
Is that the little Springer Spaniel that's on the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, that is Craig Schultz, the Springer Spaniel. Okay. I don't know that Keela's alive anymore.
Oh, right. Well, I see you with the picture with the Springer Spaniel, and I was wondering whose Springer Spaniel that was.
There's actually, I had an old picture of me in the lab with a Springer Spaniel, and the old picture is Keela. Okay. And then there's a new picture of me in a lab with a Springer Spaniel by coincidence. And that is me with Craig Schultz's dog. Okay.
Highly important. We got to know who the dogs are.
I don't, it's a total coincidence that they were both Springer Spaniels. So anyway, I worked, I was at the FBI, and we did the blood project, and that kind of came out of just discussion. So Keela's trainer was Martin Grime, and I was asking him, and Keela was great. And I was asking him, does Keela, I noticed that he had always used old samples of blood. They were always aged blood. And I said, well, does she alert to fresh? And he's like, I assume so. I don't know. Right. And then he's like, that's a great question. So we went back to the lab and we looked at the odor from fresh versus aged blood. And there was a very distinct difference in that odor. It was very clear what when fresh was starting to become aged. And so we went back and tested the dog, and the dog very readily hit on our aged blood, and she did not hit on the fresh. And the nice thing about working so directly with the handler was that it was like, okay, so I'll just add fresh to my training protocols, and ta-da, we've now like fixed that gap in about, after the experiment was done, he could fix that gap in, half a day.
Right.
So that was really cool.
What's the time period where it switches from fresh to aged?
For my specific experiment. Okay.
That's fine.
It was after about a day, but I have no data points between day 1 and day 7. So I'm not so I should say in the first week, I think it was, no, that's not true. I have day 1 and day 2. I think it was after day 1 in the day 2 range, but
right. No quoting.
Yeah, I'm not, that was very specific to that set of protocols. That is actually a project I am indeed resurrecting. So I have a student right now. I'm really excited about this project. She is going to start looking at when does live scent become dead scent. The blood research never got published for a variety of reasons. And so the nice thing about having a study like that got unpublished is I now have the chance to go back and tweak it and repeat it and publish it. So we're going to start with blood, and then we're going to go to rats, and we are going to start talking to medical schools about getting like a single human subject to actually do the whole
research on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But that's like years down the road.
Right.
Because the logistics on that are going to be a little insane. So, but right now we're just trying to we're going to look at the blood under different conditions, and then we're going to look at rats and see if we can get an idea of when that fresh to aged. And the really interesting thing about the blood that I found was that when you had the fresh blood, I had 3 subjects, and the fresh blood the 3 subjects looked completely different. And it was because, we eat different things, we take different medications, we breathe in different VOCs, but as it aged, it all became the same. So it's very much like actual scent, right? Because living human scent, the dogs can tell apart, right? Which is why they can pick a trail, but they're not distinguishing between different dead people.
Right. Everybody's, yeah. I don't remember what research paper I read this in, that it was like after 4 days, we all kind of smell the same. So,
yeah. So it was really interesting to see that in the blood, that it followed the same storyline. I mean, logically it would, it was as close to it.
Did you see a difference between like humidity and temperature and that kind of thing? Or
we didn't do that. We just did one set of conditions. So when we go back and do it, we're going to have to go back and actually look at different conditions.
So, who funds? So like the FBI, do they have a research budget?
Yeah. So at the FBI, I was in the research unit. So we did not have to go out and get funding, which was really nice, but they don't do canine research anymore. So that's kind of a bummer.
Yes.
Which is too bad, but the research unit does still exist. And so that works by, instead of getting funding, basically what happens is that the case working units will, the forensic laboratory will come in and say, we have a research question that's large, and then
hand it over to the research unit.
Yeah. And the research unit will take care of it.
So then at the university, university research is all sorts of things through NIH or Department of Justice and all sorts of things. That's how you get your university research funded, correct? Unless you have private donors.
Yeah. So for this project is probably going to go unfunded. So it's going to, which is fun. So I have other funded projects. And if anybody's out there and wants to fund this project, please let me know. But we're going to try for NSF, but it's, any NSF grant's a long shot.
Yes.
And I've come to terms with a long time ago that my human remains research is going to have to stay relatively small, because I don't know how to get funding for it. It's a very hard thing to get funding for. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that in this country, the law enforcement officers, there's not that many human remains dogs that are being worked by any kind of law enforcement-esque or military or federal anything, as opposed to in Canada or in Europe, where they do have them being deployed. We just did a huge survey because we're looking at containment for human remains materials. And we just did this huge survey and got 180 people that responded to the survey. And it was really interesting because when I sent this out, the people in Europe and Canada kept saying, do you want me to give this survey to civilians also? And I'm like, yeah, because that's all we have in the US.
Right. Your data points are huge, really skewed for the US because we're all civilians and we're all volunteers.
Yeah. So she's right now, I haven't seen the data yet, but we know generally like what type of materials people are using. But right now, the next thing that she's doing is going through the data and showing how that changes for the US versus Europe and Canada, because there's access in some countries is difficult, but also legality is different because, if you're a civilian, you're allowed to have certain things. And if you're not, and then in Europe, you have to use pig and it's all complicated. So I'm really interested in seeing how that data
lines up.
Comes
Are
out.
they still actively using?
I think we've moved past it, but not entirely. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Lorna Irish would be the one to
ask that question.
Yeah. I know Lorna was it was her mission to fix that problem.
She's on our list. We'll get her later.
She's great.
Did the FBI actually advertise for a research scientist, or is it go back to the thing that, and this is one of the things I really want college kids to understand. You really do have to network. You really do.
You do. So that's a really good question. So I was what they call a visiting scientist, which is basically, I was a postdoc, but at the FBI research unit, they don't call it postdoc because they also take post-bachelor's and post-master's people. So it's basically like, I've done some sort of school. Now I'm going to go do this, and then I'll do something else. So for me, it was a postdoc. So that's how I came in, but I did end up in the unit because I volunteered for Swig Dog. If anybody remembers what Swig Dog was back in the day, it was like a recording secretary when I was there. And so I met some of the dog guys and I got to know Rex Stockholm really well, who was fantastic. We miss him. So when I put my application in and Rex is a dog guy, so I didn't apply to him. I applied to the research unit. But that's how that link happened. Like Rex was already working with Brian Eckenrode. So
that's how you got in.
That got that together. So yes, networking was important, but it's the actual job, the PI's job.
PI,
they are
principal investigator.
Principal investigator. So the actual like non-visiting scientist people, that is an advertised job, and they just opened 2. And it did like hurt my heart a little bit. I'm like, cool. I was waiting for one of those to open for 10 years, but that's fine. I'm in Florida now, but I'm very happy to be in Florida. But there was like a split second where I was like, maybe I didn't need to make my husband give up his job.
Oh, well, you're young yet.
But I would have to have given up my research completely and done whatever the FBI wanted. So it's fine.
I get it.
Good. It's pretty good.
So you were at the FBI and then you transitioned to the Navy.
I did. So I worked at the Naval Research Laboratory.
How'd that happen?
I actually came in as a postdoc again because the Navy does not hire people indirectly. Also, the economy was really bad at that time. And so people were doing I think people today are still doing multiple postdocs. It is what it is. But it was worth it because you don't necessarily get hired in, but that is the intention. So I got brought in to work on a canine training aid project for peroxide explosives. And that was what got brought in as a postdoc. And then I kind of grew my research. And so they hired me. And so I continued to work there for a total of 10 years. And most of my work was explosives related. So I got really into that. And then we started doing some narcotics and fentanyl work at the end, and also crude oil detection with Paul Bunker for oil spill remediation.
Oh, interesting. What is the most interesting aha moment you had while working at the Naval Lab?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Okay, you can have like 2 or 3, but.
This is not an aha moment, but this is a weird moment. There was a really odd moment in my life where I found myself strapped with C4 and sitting in Dulles Airport because they were doing some dog testing and they were short
subject.
I don't know, victims. I don't know the right word. Subjects. So that was that not an aha moment, but definitely a moment I did not see myself in.
Yeah. And how much C4, by the way? I mean, was it bulky?
I mean, It was a small book.
Okay.
Enough,
On
right?
I have I don't remember what the quantity was, but they were doing different quantities, and I just happened to be the one with the largest quantity. So, and I got to walk through security. But no, I mean, it wasn't that security missed me, but I had to get through security for the dogs to not think that they wanted me to look like a normal passenger to the handler and the dog. So I had to walk through security like everybody else. It was very odd.
Wow.
Very, very strange. The dog did get me. As
Good.
hope.
Good. That's definitely a good thing.
That's an added bonus.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So
One of the things I really liked working with, this is weird, was HMTD, which is a homemade explosive. It's a peroxide explosive, hexamethylene triperoxide diamine. There you go. It was really interesting because it reminded me a lot of human remains because it has a lot of different, not nearly as many compounds as human remains, but there's a lot in it, and it decomposes to make those. So HMTD itself, the molecule HMTD, doesn't have a smell because it doesn't like to be in the gas phase. If it doesn't like to be in the gas phase, then it can't reach your nose, and so you can't smell it. It does decompose and smells like fish, like bad fish. It smells like vinegary fish. It's a lovely, lovely situation that's got going on. But I thought it was really interesting because the way it smells changes as it ages.
Yes.
Just like it remains. So it makes how do we create a training aid out of it really complicated? Because do you want your dog to find fresh or old? Do you want your dog to find when somebody who is a chemist made it, or when somebody who is a novice made it? Because they all make it smell different. So the challenge reminded me very much of human remains. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I read something on this, and it's probably your stuff, honestly, because it was just really fascinating to see how it just changed with age. Anyway, I was like a huge fan. I don't know anything about that type of stuff, in terms of because I do on the sports side, but I just thought it was fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Thanks.
But yeah, if you're trying to create the training aid, you would have to have a wide array, right? Or are you looking at, are there other options or?
I don't know yet because I haven't been able to do any actual dog testing with it, mostly because nobody's let me, not for lack of wanting to.
Right.
At the Navy, unlike the FBI, everything was funded. I had to have every hour of my life on a funded project. So if they don't fund, if whomever is funding me to do that work doesn't want me to do dog testing, then I do not get to do dog testing. So I have never been able to do any explicit dog testing with what is the optimal way to choose a train. Do we need multiple training aids? Is there one compound that's in there that we could just train that dog on and that's it? I don't know.
Yeah. And especially, it's, you're dealing with a really low vapor pressure and just, wow.
Yeah. It's something that I've always wanted to do. Hope one of these days I'll get back to it. We shall see.
maybe one of those.
Something else to resurrect.
Right.
I would like to.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So you were there for 10 years and decided to write a book while you were there.
I got approached about writing a book. I gave a Gordon Research talk, which I don't know that means anything to anybody outside of the science world, but they're kind of a cultish sort of science conference. You go stay in dorms. And
I think there's a lot of cultist science conferences, to be honest.
Yeah, this one's it's small. But anyway, so I went and gave a Gordon Research talk, and I called it, because I think I can't remember why I titled it this, but I want to say that I was the topic was sensing. And I was going to be the only one that did not have an instrumental sensor to talk about. So I called it Canines, the original biosensor. And I basically talked about how dogs are like an instrument. And then thus you need to have controls, and you need to do blanks, and you need to calibrate it. But then also how they're not like an instrument because they're thinking. And so how you have to be really careful about contamination and different things because the dog can get off track. So that was kind of the point of my talk. And then I got approached by a publisher to ask if I wanted to do a book. And he originally asked if I wanted to write a book myself. And I'm like, I don't even have any idea how to do that. So no, so I ended up doing the multi-author, contributed author version. So basically what I did is I talk about my odor chemistry stuff. And then I got everybody else to fill in the gaps in that general story of the dog is like an instrument. And so we need to worry about this. And the dog is not like an instrument. So we need to worry about this. And then we have a lot of applications at the end of the book. So people from different disciplines, trying to focus on disciplines where either the dogs are outperforming an instrument, where we've just never been able to make an instrument do what a dog does, like human remains and human scent. Or I picked topics that where instruments have traditionally been used and now dogs are starting to find a place. So medical detection, or Paul Bunker and Ed Owens wrote about crude oil detection and what place the dogs have with the instrumentation that exists today. So we kind of go through what is a sensor, how is a dog like a sensor, and then applications of a dog as a sensor.
That's fascinating. And I can't wait for my copy. It comes on Saturday. So I'm really excited, right? I just went on Amazon and, I've got Prime. Yeah, I'm super excited.
It's very large. It got longer than I wanted because we just kept adding great authors. But if you order from the publisher, we do have a 30% discount code that I can give you.
I can cancel it off of Amazon and just order from the publisher.
Well, and we'll make sure to include that in the show notes, right?
Yep.
So how did you balance, because I'm assuming you're still working full time while you're trying to write a book?
Yep.
Or is it part of your job to be able to write the book? Because, you kind of have a family too that you'd like to see occasionally.
Yes. Well, it was COVID while I was doing the bulk of the writing by convenience. I did not know that when I agreed. I don't know what would have happened otherwise. So I was not able to do any lab work. So all I could do was write anyway. But yeah, so if I can write on topics that I do research on, it is considered Navy time because we are supposed to be publishing. So I have 3 chapters in it. So 2 of which were considered Navy relevant. So I wrote those on Navy time. And then the first one, which is just the introduction, I wrote on my own time, but that wasn't so bad. Doing all of the reading and editing of the other chapters, which did have to be done on my own time, was a little intense. But again, it was COVID. It was like the height of COVID. So we were on lockdown.
You couldn't go anywhere. Yeah.
No, it was that first Christmas is when everybody's stuff had to be due to me. So it was that fall leading up to it. So it was just, I had time. There was time on my hands. It was fine.
So on the back of the book, I was looking at the table of contents. There's a whole a ecological application.
Yeah, it's within another chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed actually, and this is just more because I'm just curious, right? Because you're in Florida, and I was went to go visit the manatees in Tampa,
That's
right?
awesome.
Oh, it was amazing, right? So there's a big sea turtle rehabilitation center there. That's it's done like a soft opening. It's just kind of brand new. And when I noticed on the table of contents, it actually calls out sea turtle detection.
Yes.
In that, so anyway, it was just more of I just kind of do a couple dots there, but I don't know if that's something that you've been involved in or something that, it was pulling in from another author or anything. It was just kind of interesting so I connected the dot of Florida and sea turtles, but I just thought it was fascinating.
So it's not that's not my research, but it is very interesting. So the final chapter, I think we called it broader perspectives, and we tried to give some really broader perspectives, some really different applications that maybe weren't mature enough to have a full chapter, but give them a chance to write something. And so my name is on it because I wrote the little intro blurb starting it.
Okay.
When you get it, there's individual short sections from a bunch of different authors. The authors are on each individual section. My name just gets listed because it's I wrote the blurb, and
gotcha.
It would have looked insane to put 15 authors
right
under there. So that's kind of how I got, but so we have I can't even remember all the different sections we have in there, but the sea turtle one is really interesting. They're using the dogs to find the nests.
That's great.
And I know people, I've talked to somebody in Europe that's also using dogs to find sea turtle nests. And it's very cool.
Very cool.
Although training needs are a little challenging, I hear.
I would imagine.
I bet.
So we met because Michelle Mon called me out of the blue because you were writing the whole section on odor and scent movement, right? Which is where the illustrations from the Canine Census Foundation are used. So what research are you doing that those illustrations kind of hit the nail on the head? Because I don't quite know how all that worked.
That's a good question because I happen to have a project related to that right now. So my odor chemistry chapter, we were trying to explain how odor moves, and we ran across your really cool illustrations. And I guess Michelle reached out to you and conveniently you answered. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And we ended up with a lot more illustrations than we knew existed. So they're beautiful in the book. I was really paranoid that the publisher was going to be like, that's too many. I'm not doing those all in color, but they look great.
Good.
They turned out fantastic. So I was always interested in odor movement, but I did not get to do any research on it until recently. It's in my field, so I know a lot about it. When I lecture, I talk about a lot of things that are not my research because they all fall into that field of odor chemistry. Was like, what does it smell like? How much is there? And where is it going? So there's some really old work that was done in the late 90s when there was a big push to find old landmines. So unexploded ordnance and old landmines in different countries. And so this old work was about how does buried TNT odor move through soil. And that's kind of the last time that we being the science world has done work on how does odor move through soil and as it relates to explosives detection. And we decided, myself and collaborators at Naval Research Laboratory, actually. So this is still a collaboration it's all very incestuous with my old work. I'm working with Dr. Ryan Johnson, who is he does computational modeling. I should know what his actual job title is, but I don't.
That's okay.
Because it's like way over my head. So we're working together I'm doing the laboratory work and he's doing the computational work. And we are trying to figure out, we're updating the models for TNT. And then we're going to use that to learn more about how IED odor moves.
Oh, that would be fabulous.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it needs to be updated a little bit. So the reason why we're starting with TNT is because the models and the laboratory work already exists. So if we can match that, then we feel like our methods are good. And then we can apply that to IEDs. So we're starting with ammonium nitrate based explosive mixtures, which should be interesting because I presume that the diesel fuel would move differently than the ammonium nitrate.
Yes.
I'm kind of skipping over to what you were talking about human remains. I would think that there could actually be a huge application there.
Yeah, absolutely.
If somebody pays for it.
Yeah, if somebody pays for it. Exactly.
So you have to pick, I try to do this. I try to pick topics that somebody with the money will pay for, but I can extrapolate to other fields. And that's a good example. There is some stuff done with human remains, marginally more, but a lot of the trends that they saw in these old TNT works from the 90s were related to odor moves better through these types of soils and not these types of soils, and water does this or sun does this. And that's general. That's not specific to TNT. So it is very useful for the human remains as well. Yeah. Although these I guess they're being buried. They're not being buried too deep. So I think it would remain relevant.
Because 18 inches seems to be about the depth for most human remains stuff. Because I don't know if anybody's ever tried to dig a big hole.
I would say in the movies, they're very deep.
They're very deep.
Right.
But if you've actually tried to dig a hole to bury something by hand, it's actually a lot of work. And in the woods, it really stinks because you have roots that you run into. So just as an FYI for disposing of bodies.
The do it yourself at homers.
Yes.
Kind of pro tip.
Yeah, pro tip right there. Actually, and I know this because I'm an evaluating official, so I have to bury stuff a lot.
Okay. Bring it back home.
Yeah, bring it back home. Absolutely. So you were at the Navy doing all of this really cool research, and you're still collaborating with brilliant people at the Navy.
Yes.
And then you jumped to FIU.
Yeah, I wanted to broaden for one, I really miss the people I worked with at the Navy very much. And I also miss the lovely instrumentation that we had at the Navy. But I felt like I wanted to do research that wasn't necessarily Navy relevant.
What's the piece of instrumentation that you miss the most?
I just miss the quantity of
stuff.
Honestly, Yes. So I use a gas GCMS. I use a gas chromatographer mass spectrometer, which I had 5 that I personally used.
Oh,
I mean, did I share those with other people? Sure. But like I personally had hands on probably 5 at a time. And now I have 1. And I borrow some from Dr. Furton, but so that's a little bit of a bummer, but also my lab right now is fresh and new. And I think somebody was only in it for a couple of years and they were nutritionists. So we don't have anything in common anyway. And it's beautiful. I have windows. You can see outside. There's a Ferris wheel for some reason out my window. It's lovely, except there's no like old labs with like a history have like random stuff in them.
Oh,
and now I don't have random stuff and like I have to go buy it and that's less fun. So I miss like literally the quantity of things, but they also had a lot of fun toys for like collecting vapor or generating it for my testing. And I don't have any of that anymore. So now I have to like slowly repurchase it. And it's like, you know how when you put the word wedding on something, the price of it goes skyrocket. If you make it for science and it's advertised for science, it's like 10 times as much.
that's the university. Oh, universities have money. They don't.
No.
Yeah. Not to do some of the cool research.
Yeah. And the problem is the GCMS is a really boring instrument. So it's really hard to argue that somebody should buy it for me. They think we should just have them. I'm like, oh, so I'm working on figuring out how to get a second one.
Basic research instrumentation funded.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm working on it. So that's not one of but that you asked me why I left, that I'm not making a good case for why I left, but I really wanted to expand. I'm really happy to get back into human remains. I like the ability to do a little bit of unfunded research here and there. So you can kind of explore topics and that really helps you write grants. If you have if you've started in little places here and there. One of the other places I really want to expand is there are topics that canine handlers and trainers need answers to, but they are not sexy topics, but they're things that I could do. Right. There are research topics that I can do, but they're not sexy. So nobody's going to fund them. And it's really frustrating to me. I really like applied science, like extremely applied. Like I like to give you the answer and you to use it. So it's really nice that I can do these like small unfunded projects to answer some of these questions. And I ended up getting, after saying that I was never going to get any of this stuff funded, I ended up getting this contamination project funded. So now I get to look at training aid contamination, which is something that I've been wanting to do forever. So that's cool.
And when you're talking training aid, is that for cadaver dogs or does that just training aids in general?
So I have a very general one. It is using explosives and narcotics because it is funded. So that's what people want, but it is meant to be very general. And then I do have a containment study that's specifically for remains, although we're doing it with blood and then we might do a subset with remains, but because blood is easier to
handle,
work with. Yes. And it answers my question in the same.
Acquire.
Yes.
Yeah. Acquire. And honestly, there's less chemicals in the headspace in the odor. So it's easier for me analytically to also figure it out. Anyway, on the contamination, we are doing a survey to figure out just how easily, if you go put your training aid out for a hide and you put it under a car, how much odor is really getting on your training aid?
Yeah.
And then can we get it back off? I always tell people to let it off gas, but is that really helping? How much is that helping? Is it not? Is that I think it should. Logically, I feel like letting it off gas for a little bit should help, but I have no idea what a little bit of time is to make it reasonably lose some of that odor. Nor do I know how much is really getting on there. So we have people who are we have different steps to this, but the main portion is we are giving people materials and sending them out and saying, okay, you go while you're training, go put these kits out. And then we'll collect them every couple of months and see what's changing. So we have some mimic explosives and some, no, we don't have mimic. There's no way to mimic narcotics for this. So we have mimic explosives. And then we have a bunch of substrates that people use to make training aids. So we have silica powder and diatomaceous earth and filter paper PDMS, if you've heard about the new PDMS training aids that are out. And then I think we're going to put a get sent tube out. And so those will all go in a kit and they'll just sit, under a car by fresh grass. I don't know, wherever handlers want to put it. Yeah.
And so when you say off gas, that's the pull them back out of wherever they were sitting and hanging out and then sitting like in my house.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay.
It depends on who you are. Like that depends on the handler, but, and like what your situation is with your training needs. Are you a civilian handler? Is it at your house? Are you a military handler and it's in some kind of bunker? We're working on it.
Okay.
Small steps. But for right now, the idea is, okay, so I went and we're doing a laboratory based, a very controlled version of this also. So I always tell handlers, if you put it in a highly odorous area, you should probably bring your training aid back to a less odorous area. Your garage is a horrible example.
Your magazine or whatever, someplace where there's not stinky gas.
Where there's not gasoline, and let it off gas before you close it back up and put it away. Otherwise, you're just really soaking that odor in. But like I tell people to do this, but it's honestly like based on understanding how odor moves and not actually doing experiments. So it's really nice to finally actually be able to test this.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, cause here's me, I'm like, well, I just take my, I think about my explosives and narcotics, my cadaver training aid. I'm more worried about leaving stuff there. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, but you pick them up, the training aids, you pick them up and even I sometimes worry about I'm picking them up with latex gloves and I'm putting them right back in the bag and then sealing the bag. So all of that stuff gets squished in my training aid. And okay, you want me to let them off gas. So I have to put them, and here's me. I'm like, put them on a baking rack for like cooling cookies.
Hey, I have a whole bunch of those in my lab for the record.
Right. And then where do I leave it sit?
I don't have answers for this.
Not near your dogs.
Not near my dogs, not in the garage.
And honestly, I don't know that if it's big of a problem for human remains because there's that's such a big odor source. So I don't know that it's as big of a problem as it would be for
narcotics and explosives. I
don't know, the people who are training dogs to find sea turtles, things with really low amounts of odor.
Or your electronics detection device dogs.
That's a good example too. Yeah. So anybody with like a really low quantity of odor, you have to worry about it soaking up a whole lot of something else. And then the dog cueing in on that, because why would the dog work harder if it's getting rewarded for the easier thing? And
that's actually where my head was going, is kind of, the odors that I work with from the sport side is essential oil. I mean, it's like strong, right? It's just in your face strong. And, if I have a hide out there and it's, we have more of a situation where you have a lot of dogs, if we run it in a trial, right? We have a lot of dogs kind of hitting on the same hide, throughout the day or whatever. But I would think that just, going through my head, I'm like, well, that's probably less of an issue for us, right? Than if, Robin's out there with, her training on C4 or something, right? Or something that doesn't like stink as much. Although I don't know if that stinks very much. I'm not sure, but you get the idea. You get the idea. Yeah.
I agree with you. I do think that there would probably be I know you guys are really creative with your hides too. So I do think, I keep going back to gasoline but I do think getting a gasoline odor on it could be really problematic for the dog. The other thing is if you get odor on it, that is something that the dog happens to have a really low threshold for. So you might get a more odor on it than you think. So a lot of foods we tend to, at least humans, have very low threshold for. So it's possible that a little bit of food, like our food odor contamination, could get dogs off track. But this is if you're not changing it. If you're using, at nose work, you have the little Q-tips, so it's pretty easy to change out to new odors. The bigger thing I would be concerned about contamination-wise for nose work or hobby, what do you give it a more generic name?
Nose work is fine. Sport, whatever.
Sport. There we go. Is human scent, because the dogs can use mom's trail to find it so they don't have to work as hard. So I would be more concerned about finding mom's scent and then okay, now I'll find the source, but using mom's scent to kind of like cheat my way to get towards the source.
Okay.
And you can deal with that really easily just by using blanks and things, like putting other things out that have mom's scent on them and laying a bunch of trails.
Yeah. I mean, I actually was giving a lesson today where, I was watching the dog, and the dog clearly, and the dog has a tracking background, right? And the dog was clearly tracking my path before finding the hide.
Sneaky.
They're smart.
They're so smart.
They are so smart. Yep.
Yeah.
I have a question about all of the odor soak stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you'd done the scent vacuum thing, and we're putting stuff on substrates or odor soaks. And then you've now done some other research. How long do they last? Or is that totally odor dependent?
Oh God, I don't know yet. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
It's really complicated because it depends on what the odor is and what conditions it is, but also like, what does it mean for how long it lasts? So in my opinion, but I don't think my opinion is the norm here. In my opinion, I want it to be approximately the same level, or at least within a range of that level. And then eventually it will start to get low, and then I don't want it anymore. And the reason is because if I'm setting up a trial, I would like to know that dog 8 and dog 1 experience the same amount of odor, because it's not fair otherwise to dog 8 if they're working at 5% of what dog 1 was.
Right.
So that's my theory, but most people just say how long until the dog can't find it anymore. And so those are two different
things.
Questions. So I just did a study that's not published yet, but God willing, it will be at some point, with Jenna and Michelle. And we looked at a bunch of commercial training aids, and, I had to tell them, they're like, well, which one is best? I'm like, I don't know. Here's a factor here. Like, this one has more background odor. This one depletes faster. This one stays steady. And then it's like, there's a whole bunch of factors, but I had to arbitrarily, I said, okay, my cutoff is 10%. So when it's after 10%, it's not good anymore, but I still am not entirely convinced that if I'm using that for a bunch of dogs that I would want. I mean, I would want to know, like, especially what if I'm training a new dog? I'd like to know if I'm training at the 100% level or the 10. I didn't answer your question. I made it far more complicated.
Well, it's the great scientific answer of, well, it depends.
Yes.
Right? It depends on how you're going to use the information that I'm going to give you, because you're probably not asking the right question.
Yeah. And then to add complexity to it, if you have like a Mylar bag or something that it's been sitting in, there's odor still in that. So when you take the odor soak that's been out and you put it back in the Mylar bag, it kind of refreshes it.
Brilliant.
So So basically, if you think of it this way, if I put the odor soak out for 8 hours straight, maybe it'll be depleted by the end of 8 hours. But if I take it out for 1 hour increments, 8 consecutive days, it probably will not be gone by the end of that 8 hours, which also makes me setting up experiments really complicated. Because I'm like, how do I pick a variable?
Right. And that's a lot of variables.
Like, what's most useful or relevant? It's very hard. And that's when if you're looking at research studies, like particularly if they're studying sort of similar things, there are so many variables for us to choose from. Just so you have to keep in mind that whatever we chose, the answer is very specific to that set of variables that we went with.
Okay. So here's a question I have. As a scientist who writes peer-reviewed journals, what is something that you can tell me as a layman that when reading those peer-reviewed journals, I should watch for?
Well, the first thing that I would keep in mind is if I'm reading a behavior journal, I'm a chemist. If I'm reading a journal that's written by a behaviorist, I need to keep in mind that I am not a behaviorist. This is not my specialty. And I need to not draw too strong of conclusions from it, because I do not understand every single aspect of what they're doing. Because just because a whole variety of people pick up that journal, technically you're supposed to be writing to the audience that's for that journal itself.
That specialty.
Right. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you. So if I'm reading one of Nathan Hall's work, I always need to bear in mind that to not overinterpret it because I might be missing something. Also, as I was saying, you need to look at how the test was set up and know that those results are specific to how that test was set up. So you don't want to give that test broader meaning than it actually, or the results of that test broader meaning than it actually has. So I don't think that you need to be out looking at peer-reviewed literature and trying to figure out what's wrong with it, because hopefully if the peer review process worked, meaning that I wrote it and I sent it and 3 or 4 people who are experts in the field blindly read it and then sent their responses back to me, and then I changed my manuscript based on their responses. So that's how the peer review process works. And then I sent it back in, and then they could either give me one more round of changes or they give me a thumbs up. I'm not saying that hopefully peer review works and that what is out there is good. That's not 100% of the time, but more often than not. So the people don't need to go around looking for errors in the literature, but just making sure that you're not making that literature mean more than what it is.
Right.
Or what you can take from it as like, know your limitations.
I'll be honest, when I read most peer-reviewed papers, I read the abstract, the beginning, and the conclusions, because everything else in the middle makes my head hurt.
I mean, honestly, I read the abstract and the conclusion, and I only read the middle part if it's like very closely related to what I'm doing.
Okay, so
that makes me feel better.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So,
or I'm confused by it, but generally, yeah.
So who do you follow for researchers?
Oh, that's a great question too. Nathan Hall is always a really good one. Paola Prada, or she doesn't go by Prada. Paola Tiedemann and I, yes, so we went to grad school together, which is why I call her by her maiden name. So if you're listening to this, I apologize. There's not very many people that do the very specific thing that I do. So she and I kind of have similar interests and we have similar techniques. So I like to see what she's up to. And it's not necessarily published, but I always like to see what Michelle Mon and Jenna Gadberry are doing with the TADS next. That's good. I'm trying to think. Other people are like straight up chemistry, so that's not terribly helpful. And if there's anything out of Lorna or anything out of DSTL, which is where she works, so Lorna Irish, or out of DSTL is Defense Science and Technology Laboratory in the UK, so Faye Porritt. They always have really good work also.
Interesting. What about what you're currently doing are you most excited about?
I'm really excited to finally do the contamination work. I am thrilled about my human remains. I just really like the new projects that I'm working on. I think I covered most of them that we have going on right now. I'm writing a lot of grants right now. I think that's pretty much all I'm doing. I look forward to doing more. I'm just really excited to be able to answer questions that either I've wanted to answer for a long time or that handlers have been asking me for a long time and I haven't been able to access. So I'm just really excited about expanding drastically and then being able to collaborate. The DoD tends to make things a little difficult with collaboration. So it's a bit easier now, particularly, and now I can work with foreign nationals if I want. It's amazing.
Right. So when you're doing grant writing, is that for governmental like DOJ, NIH, National Science Foundation grants, or are you also doing private foundation stuff?
I have no idea how to do private foundation stuff.
Okay.
So it's all the government agencies. Ironically, my one big funded project, right? I have a couple little ones. My big funded project right now is Office of Naval Research because I said it's all very incestuous.
Well, yeah. Well, so I'm
which is the parent to where I used to work, but I have a good relationship with them. So I guess I haven't fully left explosives yet.
That's okay.
Well, I hope not because I'm working on getting an explosives license at FIU. So I can't leave yet.
That would be fantastic.
It will. I'm working on it. It's a process, but everybody at FIU has been very positive and incredibly helpful. It's been a nice change of pace.
And interesting. So if you had unlimited resources, what would you be working on?
If I had unlimited resources, one, I would finish the HMTD question with the dogs because that drives me crazy that I do not know the answer to that. It's driven me crazy for years. Every time I present on the topic, I get to the end, I'm like, and this is what the odor does. It probably causes problems for the dogs.
But we don't know.
And then it's like, So that would be the first research study that I would go back and do. Also, there's a piece of instrumentation that I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it is incredibly powerful at being able to detect very low amounts of vapor in real time, which means immediate. So whenever I take samples, I have to it takes a really long time. So like the dog sniffs and takes a sample immediately, right? So my instruments are not sensitive enough. We have to kind of help the instruments work more like a dog. So we have to like collect a lot of odor onto a substrate, and then I can put it in the instrument, and the instrument can tell you what is there. It can't just sniff. So I cannot see how odor changes in time. I can get sections of time. So there is one instrument that's about between $600,000 and $750,000 that has incredibly low sensitivity. So I would be able to get much closer to what a dog could do, and I would have that. I want that so badly.
Maybe
someday
Santa will bring that.
Wow. That would be great.
Anybody out there with wanting to fund some dog research, there you go.
Yes. For $750,000.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to housebreak it. Right.
One of the other questions we ask a lot of people, what do your mom and dad think you do?
What do my mom and dad think I do? They know I'm a chemist, and they know that I work with the dogs that detect things. I don't know. I always like to hear my husband try to tell people what I do. It always comes out a little bit differently. He always does a better job than I think he's going to. But they generally say that I try to figure out what dogs are smelling and to train. And then my husband will usually throw in say I try to help them be trained better in one way or another.
That works.
Probably some references to TV shows or whatever.
No, I'm really happy that I have a weird job. And so nobody but man, the whole time I was bartending when I was in grad school, which I shouldn't have. Don't do that. That was not something I was supposed to be doing. But man, I got called Bones. I got called Abby from NCIS, all of that stuff. I'm really happy that I now have a weird specialty. And so nobody can call me any name on character on TV.
That's great.
Scully, if you're the older people would call me Scully.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever invent a instrument that will replace a dog's nose?
No. For one, I won't invent an instrument. So no, but do I think there will be an instrument that will be invented that will fully replace the dog's nose? No, because the dogs have the mobility, so they can use this odor plume to get to source. And that's not something we've even really attempted to do with instrumentation, is try to figure out how to follow the odor plume in order to get to a source of odor. And then also instruments don't do as well in complex backgrounds like dogs do. We can do really well with the instrument in a complex odor scenario if we're looking for like one odor. But if we're looking for like a human, that's a whole bunch of odors, and then we're doing that in a complex background. I mean, maybe someday, but we're talking like, 10, I don't think I'll be alive, but I think that we'll get better at combining or understanding better how to use sensors and instruments with dogs and how to use their strengths. Because there's also occasions where dogs are not appropriate. There's occasions where it's too dangerous, where it's too hard for the dog to get to, where they're not going to be effective. Like that's one of the reasons why you do those studies about how does odor move through soil, because there's occasions where the dogs are not going to be effective. So you need to bring in some other means of finding that explosive in that case.
Interesting. I have exhausted all of my questions for the moment. So we'll reserve the right to bring you back because that would be lovely.
This was fascinating.
Yes.
I'm sitting here like listening because I'm like, whoa.
I know.
Wow.
Right.
I was also thinking, I also came into the conversation thinking I had a certain intelligence level, and I'm leaving the conversation totally rethinking that. So just tell you one ridiculous. Thing. This has been fascinating.
That is ridiculous. Some people, I talk to people and they're like, random people, they're like, oh, what did you major in college? I'm like, chemistry. And they're like, oh, I hated chemistry. I'm like, yeah, well, I can't speak anything other than English, and I can't write creatively, and I can't spell anything. So,
So where do people go to follow you?
I am on Facebook, if you can spell my last name correctly, which is DEGREEFF. There's 2 Fs. So I am on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Perfect. And if you could challenge your canine handlers out there in the listener universe to do one thing better, what would it be?
Use more blanks and distractors. Hard distractors.
So when you say distractors, we have a whole podcast.
I think she means diversion.
Coming out on the difference between distractions and diversions. Right. And so...
Oh, well, I guess I'll have to listen to that.
So this is stuff that we've specifically placed to divert the dog from target odor.
Yes.
Correct?
Diversions. Who knew? I did not know that.
Well, that's because some brilliant other person talked about it in a webinar I saw last year, and we hijacked it. So,
cool. Yeah, more of them and a wider variety of them. And then lots of different types of blanks. Also.
So blank, you mean the actual, like the vessel or something? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Excellent. All right.
Fabulous.
Thank you, Lauren, for spending some time with us. And for everyone, go out to our website to pick up our monthly freebies, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Canine Detection Collaborative.
We appreciate the time you spend with us. If you liked this episode, not only should you follow us so you don't miss the next one, but please also rate and review us in your favorite podcast app. For info on collaborating with us, go to caninedetectioncollaborative.com. That's K9detectioncollaborative.com, where you can find our socials and pick up our latest monthly freebie. Join us again to talk training in the next episode.